Is there a timestamp y'all want to go to, or you want to start from the beginning?
Yeah, there actually is a timestamp. Or we can watch the whole thing. It's up to y'all. But if you want to get to like the meat of it,
well, no, it's not y'all. Y'all want to pull it up. So,
Sean Moore, what do y'all want? Y'all want the whole thing or just a piece?
I always say get to the meat of it, bro. Go ahead and get it. If you got the timestamp, hit him with time.
Yeah, I got the timestamp. Let me pull it up here.
And if y'all got questions for YAP, get ask specific questions dealing with this right here. I know a lot of y'all bent on the prophecy and want to throw this to the side, and now all of the anti-DNA people coming out, and DNA is nothing but speculation and all of this other stuff. Let's just hear them out and see what's what. Because DNA worked to get people out of the penitentiary. DNA worked to get child support. If DNA worked to solve murders, let me pull up that other thing on what the Fed said about Jed Match. Well, I can't act like them other dudes ain't been saying, but the Fed said something about Jed Match. Y'all ain't gonna just get on here and talk this crazy, spooky Bible talk and throw Jed Match and throw DNA out the window all of a sudden. Y'all can't do that to me. This ain't the channel. This ain't a good channel for a lot of you Bible thumpers. Go ahead, I'm mute myself.
All right, so you can start.
Before you start the video, hold on. Before you start the video, I want to make something clear to everybody in the chat that this video is particularly, we're discussing whether or not haplogroup E or people here in the Americas or in the diaspora were haplogroup E that came off of the slave ships, that they keep trying to landlock and say that we belong. They say that we were indigenous to West Africa and that that we was nowhere else but there. This is basically dealing with that.
19 minutes and 9 seconds. I put the timestamp in the back.
And hopefully he just misunderstood something, right? Or misunderstood the point that James was trying to make. Because James was definitely not trying to make the case that all West Africans are Jews, or that the Khazars are the origin of the Ashkenazi. He's making his case like right here again. West African DNA is part of the common ancestral population of the Israelites, and that's what needs to get addressed. So I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to hand it over to Ibri. And real quick, James, is there anything I'm missing, or anything you want to touch on with that?
No, I say you pretty much hit everything right on the head, because issue number 2 was the main point I was trying to make. But I don't think he, like you were pointing out, I don't think he really understood in question 2 what he was asking and the implications of that question. It had to be unpacked. And as I tried to unpack it, he just exited stage left, didn't want to talk anymore.
Right.
Hey, real quick, can you pause it for just a quick second?
Okay, Avery, you got it. You want to share a screen? I got you, man.
Just a quick summary of what was going on before this was that I was describing the interaction on Facebook between Damon Richardson and James Gassell in terms of James offering some information in terms about the two questions that he had. We were putting forth the information that we did not challenge the first question that he had, or the first challenge that he had. We did not support the Khazarian Khazar Ashkenazi origin myth, but we were taking issue with the second part, and James had furnished him with some information about some genetics that would kind of challenge the second point. So we had just covered the interaction on Facebook and left it at the point to where Yeshub had offered to let him come on the show, and again we have not heard from him since. So is this for one of y'all here, Sean? Is this for one of y'all here more?
Yeah, he's at Genesis 49ers a lot.
Yeah,
oh, you talking about that? What's on the screen right here?
Yeah, he's not part of the YAP gang, but he does follow us. He does, and he is very astute.
Okay. As well. All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, y'all. I'm listening.
By the way, Moore, did you want them to go back and listen to that beginning part where you're breaking it down, or you want to just keep?
Yeah, at their own leisure, bro. Like if you want to get into the back and forth, I literally took screenshots of the conversation on Facebook. So at y'all's leisure, y'all can go back on the YAP King channel and go check out the whole thing. But this Avery have this timestamp. I believe you have this part timestamp for a reason. Yeah,
Yeah,
to tell you, yeah. I want to hear that. I want to get. I'm like my man Red. Let's get to the meat. Make sure we're addressing specifically the where Damon Richardson is wrong in the statement that he made. Y'all, nobody, and because these people are Israelites, they're not pushing no 13th tribe. They've made that clear, abundantly clear. We don't need nobody taking no video and chopping it and running what all these Israelites do and stereotyping and broad brushing and all that garbage. They're dealing with West Africa and a statement that came from Damon Richardson when he was on his channel. Go ahead, I mute myself, dude.
Yeah, y'all can stay here then. Y'all can stay here.
All right, we good to go play?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
All right.
Yeah, actually, what I want you to do, can you read question number 2 one more time? And I'll get my slide here. But read question number 2 so we can flow into this.
You got it.
Thank you.
Provide scientific-based research that is peer-reviewed that conclusively finds that West Africans are the descendants of common Jewish Israelite ancestors from whom they derive the majority of their DNA and ethnicity, rather than from the indigenous West African people groups, i.e. Congo, Western Bantu, Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Senegal, and Ivory Coast. In other words, research supporting this claim. And just to be clear, fam, he didn't even list off people groups. He listed off countries. Clear about that, but let's go ahead and do it.
All right, so now you can share my screen. So let's actually, and by the way, if you hear that it's loud in the background, forgive me. But so this paper actually is a perfect paper that can answer his question. So it's titled "The History of African Gene Flow into Southern Europeans, Levantines, and Jews." And this is a peer-reviewed paper. You can see that it's from the National Library of Medicine. And you can also see the various geneticists that were a part of it, such as Muntaser and also the famous David Reich. He actually has a lot of good papers that came out even this year of 2022. But let's actually get into the paper. So it touches on African gene flow into Southern Europeans, Levantines, and Jews. Our focus is going to be on Jews. Now, we're going to read the abstract and then go to the meat of the paper. So the last 3 sentences of the abstract says, we also detect 3 to 5% of sub-Saharan African ancestry in all 8 of the diverse Jewish populations that we analyzed. For the Jewish admixture, we obtain an average estimated date of about 72 generations. This may reflect descent of these groups from a common ancestral population that had already had some African ancestry prior to the diaspora. So let's sort of break this down. So 3 to 5% of sub-Saharan African ancestry is in all 8 of the diverse Jewish populations, and it goes back 72 generations, and it's a common ancestral population that had already had some African ancestry prior to the Jewish diaspora. So let's actually dig deeper into this. Let's go to the actual section that talks about the Jews. And so if you follow along to the discussion part of the paper, go to paragraph 3 and let's start reading it. So it says, a striking finding from our study is the consistent detection of 3 to 5% sub-Saharan African ancestry in the 8 diverse Jewish groups we studied: Ashkenazis from Northern Europe, Sephardis from Italy, Turkey, and Greece, and Mizrahis from Syria, Iran, and Iraq. These are the populations. So now let's get into the time period in which all this admixture is taking place. So it says, we estimate that the average date of the admixtures of 72 generations, 2,000 years, assuming 29 years per generation, is older than that in Southern Europeans or other Levantines. So basically, it's saying that Jews have sub-Saharan African DNA older than Southern Europeans and Levantines. So let's keep reading. So it says, the point estimates overall 8 populations are between 1,600 and 3,400 years ago, but with largely overlapping confidence intervals. It is
Hey, Avery, let me point this out real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
3,400 years ago is the inception of the state of Israel itself, about
That's true.
1400 BCE.
Yeah, 3,400 years ago would put us in the time period of the late Bronze Age collapse / early Iron Age. So this is Israel is in the nation. They are in the Levant in this time, as James said. So it says, it is intriguing that the Mizrahi, Iraqi and Iranian Jews, who are thought to descend at least in part from Jews who were exiled to Babylon about 2,600 years ago, share the signal of African admixture. Now, this is very powerful because most people will consider Mizrahi, Iranian, and Iraqi Jews to be the purest Jewish types because after the Assyrian Babylonian Empire, they were kind of stayed in the region. And so people would consider either the Mizrahi Jews as the purest and oldest Jewish communities, and they do have the oldest Jewish communities, or they'll say that it's the Yemenis. But focusing on the Mizrahis, basically the Babylonian Jews, they have the oldest communities and are considered the purest Jews. And even they have African DNA. And again, this is as far back as 2,600 years ago. So it says, a parsimonious explanation for these observations is that they reflect a history in which many of the Jewish groups descend from a common ancestral population, which was itself admixed with Africans prior to the beginning of the Jewish diaspora that occurred in the 8th and 6th century BC. Now, this is powerful because basically it's saying that before the Jews even went into the diaspora, the Assyrian diaspora and the Babylonian diaspora, before the diasporas occurred, Jews already had this sub-Saharan African DNA. Now, you might be asking, what type of African DNA is this talking about? We'll go down to the, I believe this is the 5th or 6th paragraph, and it actually tells you. And it says, a potential issue that could, in theory, influence our finding is that the exact population contributing to African ancestry in West Eurasians is unknown. To gain insight into the African source populations, we carried out PCA analysis, which suggested that the African ancestry in West Eurasians is at least as closely related to East Africans Luya, and if y'all look up the Luya, they are a Bantu people, as to the West African Nigerian Yoruba. If you don't mind, Moore, can you reread his statement for paragraph 2 and then come back to my paper?
You got it.
Just reread that really quick, and then we'll come right back to the paper, and I'll pull something else up.
You got it, sir. So again, question 2, provide scientific-based research that is peer-reviewed that conclusively finds that West Africans are the descendants of common Jewish Israelite ancestors from whom they derive the majority of their DNA and ethnicity, rather than from the indigenous West African people groups, i.e. Congo, Western Bantu, Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Senegal, and Ivory Coast. In other words, research supporting this claim.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, hold on one second, gentlemen.
So,
listen, y'all, listen.
So,
if anybody want to get Damon Richardson, Damon Richardson is more than welcome to question them. I feel anybody in all of Israel, if anybody in all of Israel got an idea what they talk about with their DNA, peer-reviewed paper, Damon Richardson, this would be the time, and these gentlemen here would be the gentlemen. But I'll mute myself.
The populations, it actually shows you in the charts when it comes to the African DNA, and African Americans have the most of it because it's West African DNA. There's no getting around this.
Dunamis, run it back just a little bit to right before he gets to the graph.
And real quick, before he hits play, the point that Ibri just made here when he compared the Luya to the Nigerian Yoruba DNA was that the same DNA that they find amongst these founding populations of Israelites, that's 3 to 5% sub-Saharan African, is also the same sub-Saharan DNA you can find amongst not only the Luya but also in the genetic signatures of West Africans, such as the Nigerian Yoruba. So that needs to be very clear. Go ahead. You got it, Dennis.
Okay, so here's good.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Or can you reread his statement for paragraph 2 and then come back to my paper?
You got it.
Just reread that really quick, and then we'll come right back to the paper, and I'll pull something else up.
You got it, sir. So we're in question 2. Provide scientific-based research that is peer-reviewed that conclusively finds that West Africans are the descendants of common Jewish Israelite ancestors from whom they derive the majority of their DNA and ethnicity, rather than from the indigenous West African people groups, i.e. Congo, Western Bantu, Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Senegal, and Ivory Coast. In other words, research supporting this claim.
Thank you for that.
Kabachi.
So when it comes to the populations, it actually shows you in the charts when it comes to the African DNA, and African Americans have the most of it because it's West African DNA. There's no getting around this. They're using West African DNA when it comes to these populations. Now, what's interesting about this is that when it comes to the Iranian Jews and the Iraqi Jews, they have the oldest of this. So over here is the generations. It says estimated date of admixture generations. And right here it says 129 plus or minus 34. And then this says 153 plus or minus 22. And this is the Iranian Jews, just to show y'all. Right there. This is the Iranian Jews, and this is the Iraqi Jews. Iranian Jews and Iraqi Jews have the oldest African DNA when it comes to all these Middle Eastern and Mediterranean groups. I believe the next oldest is the Syrian Jews. If you highlight right here, it says 99 generations plus or minus 23, Syrian. And then after that, it is the Sephardic Greek.
No, you're missing Northern Italy. It's pretty old.
Let me see. Yeah, the Italian right here. Oh, excuse me, the Northern Italy. Yeah, Northern Italy has 153, 54, excuse me, plus or minus 27, and then you go to the Syrian Jews next, who have the oldest admixture, and then it's Sephardic Greek Jews, Sephardic Turkey Jews, which is Anatolia, and Italian Jews. They all have basically around the same amount of African admixture from 82 generations to 88 generations. So
they're basically showing you. I'm sorry, bro, but they're basically showing you here the same thing that was read out a little further up in the paragraph that the brother was reading. That during the Babylonian exile, around this time, we have the Iranian, we have the Iraqi. How many generations back this goes. So they're proving out just how far back this DNA goes.
Exactly. And this is hitting head on what he wanted to know about Jews and African Americans and Black people. And it would seem like the ancestors of the Jewish people and the ancestors of African Americans converged at some point 3,400 years ago in the Levant. Because there's no way for them to have this DNA if our ancestors weren't there. People don't just pop up and have DNA from ethnic groups. Like, I'm not just going to have a kid that's going to have Chinese genes out of nowhere. Like, the ancestors of both of our peoples came together and
procreated. Yeah.
Yes.
To a significant extent, because it's scattered everywhere as far as Jews are concerned.
Exactly. In all 8 diverse Jewish populations. Exactly. So just to push this point even further, I'm going to share another screen, but there's a paper that actually illustrates that that Bantu people and West and Central Africans actually have Levantine DNA. So I'm going to share this next screen. I believe this is it right here. Oh, excuse me, hold on. All right. Share my screen, and this is another peer-reviewed paper because that's all we do here at the YAP game. So this paper, once it comes up, all right. So this paper is titled "Pleistocene North African Genomes Links Near Easterner and sub-Saharan African human populations. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in the specific part of the paper that's relevant to us. So right here is an important piece that kind of connects some more things together, because if we're going to claim that we have Israelite ancestry, then it's probably important to illustrate that we have some type of Levantine ancestry. And it turns out we do. Again, from this paper, it says that a more recent link is the spread of Bronze Age Levant-like ancestry in sub-Saharan Africa, together with agriculture during the Bantu expansion. So let's break this down. So during the Bantu expansion, it seems like there was a introduction of Bronze Age Levant-like ancestry in sub-Saharan Africa, together with agriculture during the Bantu expansion. Because the Bantu people, if y'all don't know, they're really interesting people, because they had developed agriculture as well as iron working. And as we know, agriculture likely comes from the Middle East. The Natufians, as an example, were technically the first farmers. And when it comes to metallurgy, that also developed in the Middle East. And it seems like when these Bantu people are coming into sub-Saharan Africa, they're bringing Levant-like genes in places like Western Central Africa, as well as iron and agriculture. And so what is this?
Shout out.
No, go ahead.
Shout out EU 290 and the iron smelters.
Yep. And so what is this Levant, this Bronze Age Levant DNA? So Bell says it right here. It says the Bronze Age Levant gene pool has been proposed as a mixture of Neolithic Levant with individuals related to Caucasus hunter-gatherers and early Neolithic farmers from Iran and from Anatolia. Middle Eastern DNA.
Paternally, we're talking about haplogroup J and E1B1B, possibly some T and some R up in there, right?
Yes, we are.
Right.
Right. And they have this type of DNA, Middle Eastern DNA, Levantine DNA. Bantu people have it. But that's not the only source that talks about
the Fulani got T in it too, don't it?
Oh yeah, Fulani 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't just end there. I'll pull up another paper that talks about West Central African people having Levant DNA, something that Damon Richardson says that apparently West Central Africans don't have. So here's another paper. I just want to push this even further. This paper right here that I'm sharing is titled Reconstructing Prehistoric African Population Structure. If y'all can see that, share my screen.
Also, James, don't forget about the Chadic people in RV88, and that, you know,
yeah, we
how
know
we
that
see it, they would have had to come in. Yeah, they would have had to come in during the Bantu as well, the Bantu expansion, you know, for that gene to flow into Africa.
And to point out two historical things, we do know that Herodotus speaks of how Nico II commissioned Hanno the Navigator to colonize the rest of Africa with the overflow that was coming from all the wars and stuff that was going on in the Levant. And we have the tale of Hanno the Navigator himself, which a lot of scientists believe that he actually went to West Africa and pretty much brought back a gorilla, and that's the things they were describing in the stories.
Mm-hmm. And so this paper right here goes deeper into that, goes into the fact that these West and Central Africans had this Levantine DNA. Again, this is a peer-reviewed paper titled Reconstructing Prehistoric African Population Structure. Here are all the scientists that were a part of it. Again, David Reich was a part of this as well. He's like one of the most head geneticists.
Yeah, he heads all of these, most of these papers in this field. He pretty much pioneered this field.
Mm-hmm. And so we're going to go to the relevant part of the paper, which talks about West and Central Africans having Levantine DNA, which for some reason people think is impossible, but it's not. So it is right here, I believe. Hold on. As y'all can see, this is very, very long paper. But here it is right here. So we're going to read from this section. So it says Tanzania. I'm not going to name all these African tribes, just going to name some of them. So Tanzania, Yoruba, Esan, Loyo, Luyo, Bantu Kenya, just these various African groups. So it says, are all fitted as consistent with having 100% Mande related Western African related ancestry. Basically, all these groups are related. Niger Congo people, Bantu people are all, basically related. And it says the Mandinka from the Western African coast are fitted as having 2.8% plus or minus 0.6% Levant Neolithic related ancestry, PPNB. So again, another source talking about how Western Central Africans do have Levant DNA, Levant Neolithic related ancestry. And so the last thing, or not the last thing, but another thing I want to point out is how it actually makes sense that there would be, let's say, E1B1A type peoples in the Levant, in that part of the world in that time. If most people take a DNA test, particularly those with E1B1A, can share my screen really quick. They will see that they're related to a man named Ramses III, who was the pharaoh of Egypt at the time. And it turns out that Ramses had E1B1A. And so it reads right here, it says, you and Ramses III share an ancient paternal line ancestor who probably lived in North Africa or Western Asia. Western Asia is the Middle East. So basically it's saying that, you and Ramses III have an ancient paternal ancestor. We share an ancestor who could have been in North Africa or in the Middle East. And this makes
shout out EV38.
Right. Shout out EV38, because the E marker likely has its origin in the Middle East. I'll touch on that here in a second.
Yeah, and you always got to remember that North Africa, especially the Levant, is the same biogeographical area, which means the same peoples, animals, fauna, everything live in that location.
All Afro-Asiatic populations. Mm-hmm. And so the oldest, as a matter of fact, the oldest E1B1A marker we have found in Africa is Ramses III, because he goes back to the late Bronze Age. And then we found an old E1B1A marker in Ethiopia, which is a place heavily populated by Afro-Asiatic speaking groups. So I'm going to share my next screen, which illustrates who the true West Africans are. Who is the oldest West African population? And the oldest West African population,
hey, doing this real quick, can you pause it up, bro?
Is actually Pygmy and Khoisan groups, basically A and B mark.
So before Ibri goes further in the video, I just want to make a quick point that's relevant for this whole portion here. So when Ibri was talking about the Mandinka population being tested at a 2.8% plus or minus 0.6% with Levantine DNA, etc. This is where it correlates to Dante 100%, right? So Dante in GEDmatch comes up. He comes up Mandinka quite often in a lot of different portions and calculators and GEDmatch or whatnot. And he also has this subclade that's consistent with the Natufians from the Levant or whatnot, right? And one of the calculators in GEDmatch tests for Natufian DNA, and Dante has just under 3% Natufian DNA, which matches up 100% with this study family. So when Dante literally says he is the receipt, I have to give it to him. He is 100% the receipt. He's literally living and breathing proof of what this study says on our side of the waters. He's a brother who connects to the Mandinka people genetically, right? But also has a haplogroup that goes back to the Levant and has a Levantine connection at just under 3%, like the Mandinka people in the study have. So I just want that to be clear, fam. You got it.
I advise that y'all check out this paper, again, another peer-reviewed paper titled Ancient West African Foragers in the Context of African Population History. Here are all the, geneticists and scientists that are part of it. Again, David Reich. You can't get away from David Reich. So we're going to read the abstract of the paper. So it says, we generated genome-wide DNA data from 4 children buried roughly 8,000 and 3,000 years ago in the Shuma cave, in the Shumalaka, Cameroon, one of the earliest archaeological sites within the probable homeland of Bantu languages. One individual carried the deep divergent Y chromosome haplogroup A0, which is found today almost exclusively in the same region. However, all 4 individuals' genome-wide ancestry profiles are most similar to West Central African hunter-gatherers, implying that present-day populations in Western Cameroon, as well as Bantu speakers across the continent, are not descendant getting tongue twisted. Substantially from the population represented by the 4 people. So again, Bantu speakers, Bantu people are not related to these ancient West Central African hunter-gatherers. We're not related to these ancient Western African populations.
Right.
So
we did procreate with them though, because as the Bantus came into the area, we did take the women and have children. So you may find pygmy DNA if you are African American in your haplogroup E. You may find pygmy DNA.
Mm-hmm. African Americans typically have around, I would say, 1 to 5% of pygmy DNA. Yes, and y'all should read the rest of this.
I want to point out, it says 3,000 years ago. That's 1,000
Right.
BCE.
Mm-hmm.
That we're talking about, that where they're not finding any evidence of the modern people in West Africa. Now we got to ask ourselves, okay, what happens after that time period, which is something we constantly point to. All these wars in the Levant start going on, and people start migrating, and you start getting histories of, like, with Nico II commissioning the Phoenicians to circumnavigate and colonize West Africa, the rest of Africa.
Exactly. And so, yeah, the oldest populations in West Central Africa are A and B markers. Here's the chart. And as James said, this goes back from 8,000 years to 3,000 years. And it's L for the mitochondrial DNA, it's L0, L0A, and L1C. And for the Y DNA, it's B and it's A. Again, most African Americans are E1B1A. Well, excuse me, most Niger-Congo Bantu people are E1B1A. Let me put it that way. But so actually, now let's go to another part of what Damon typically says when it comes to his I guess his distaste for an idea of us coming from the Middle East rather than us originating in Western Central Africa.
And all these papers are after 2013, correct?
I'm going to share my screen.
Y'all heard me. All these papers, I heard about 4 peer-review papers. All of these are post after 2013. Y'all can hear
when
me.
it comes to these papers, sorry, I was. But when it comes to these papers, some are before 2013 and some are after 2013.
Gotcha.
It's a mixture.
So to make a long story short with that, as long as the papers, there's no contradiction to the papers as we move forward. So if, let's say, a paper's in 2010, then another one's in 2013, another one's in 2016, another one's in 2018, 19, and they're all in conjunction, and there's no papers refuting that, then we're on par.
Okay, no, hold on, y'all. Do me a favor. Address Bruce. Thank you, Bruce, because you know Bruce is he's Israel, but he's totally against DNA. Totally against DNA. How would y'all answer that?
All right,
read
so
that
I don't want.
No, driver. Somebody read that and see what Sean got to say.
Do you mind if we not deal with that at the moment? Let's finish up this real quick. I'll deal with Bruce later because I already know how he feels.
I'm gonna have to lead us on the screen there because I don't want to forget Bruce, and I definitely appreciate you, Bruce's super chat. I'm walking away. I'm coming back.
Not a problem.
I could answer really quickly, and then we can.
Yeah, we can definitely deal with this, and then we'll go. You got to read.
And then I can put other stuff up on the screen. Go ahead.
Yes. Oh, you got it.
I'll be back.
So when it comes to prophecy, that's personal interpretation. Everybody in the Abrahamic faiths have their own idea of prophecy. This is actually why you get the splitting of different sects. Like you have different Jewish sects, different Christian sects, different Muslim sects. Everybody has their own idea when it comes to these prophecies. So, and that's partly why I don't use prophecy when it comes to like the curses and all that. I don't use it. And as for endless genealogies, I believe he said, not really, because we have a set point when things begin and a set point when things end. So we're not just going on and on and on, not knowing where we're going. We know exactly where we're starting at and ending it. So it's not endless. As a matter of fact, technically, you yourself, Bruce, are dealing with genealogy when you claim that you're an Israelite. You're claiming to descend from the ancient Israelites, going back to Jacob. That's a lineage. That's a genealogy. And plus, genealogy is mentioned all throughout the scriptures, like Genesis chapter 10. That's dealing with genealogies. Obviously, the Israelites recorded genealogies from Adam to Noah, Noah to Israel. So, yeah, I don't know what you mean by all that. And also, the science that we're dealing with is not hypothesis or theory. Again, haplogroups are sex-determining chromosomes. Unless you believe, Bruce, that non-binaries exist, which I'm pretty sure you don't believe, when it comes to Y-DNA, the men carry an X and Y chromosome, and women carry an X chromosome. Haplogroups literally is what makes a man and a woman a woman. So unless you're saying that this gender and sex and stuff isn't true, then you have to believe in some form of DNA. And also DNA, if you study it right.
I'm sorry, do me a favor. Do me a favor. Do me a favor. Where Dunamis, you there? Or you don't walked away?
No. Yeah, I'm here.
Or Leo. Read it nice and slow. I want to make sure that they're hitting Bruce's answer. Read that nice and slow. Then we're gonna get right back into it.
Okay,
Read
I'll go real
what
quick.
you just said.
I'll go through it. Constant DNA debates, endless genealogies, 1 Timothy 1 and 4, continuous back and forth, nothing but confusion, speculation, hypothesis. Science will change again. That's all this DNA stuff is. Stick with true history, the curses, the prophecy, Old Testament, and the New Testament.
I want to say something real quick. So I see Bruce is always in there, on Berean and going back and forth with Israelites and Christians. Is that not endless? This has been endless. So I'm not, that caused confusion as well. So I'm not really understanding. That's why I didn't want to answer his question, because I already dealt with him the other day on that. He can believe what he wants, do what he want to do. That's fine. We up here doing our thing right now. When we finish, you come back on tomorrow or after we finish and you say what you have to say. I yield.
Yeah, I got no issue dealing with Bruce and whatnot. And so you can actually go back on two previous episodes, or a couple previous episodes on Berean and whatnot, and see me agree dealing with Bruce and whatnot. And Bruce is 100% special pleading here because he's pretending like he doesn't deal with DNA, right? Again, Ibri pointed out the fact that he does deal with genealogy when he claims to be an Israelite. And we were on here the other day going through scripture where he actually claimed that there was a paternal genealogy of Jesus in Matthew whatnot, and that was okay because that was not endless. It was going to a point. And so I brought out the concept, like, is it unbecoming of an Israelite to reconcile themselves via the genealogy, as it literally says in the scrolls? I pointed out a scripture form that said that. It wasn't, I believe, in the book of Chronicles, I think it's chapter 9, verse 1. And so he had to agree. Like, again, he didn't want to agree, but he couldn't disagree with the fact that, again, like, it's not unbecoming of an Israelite to reconcile themselves via genealogy. That's not endless, right? And again, we're not talking about being like genetically superior. We're not talking about nothing like that, right? We're using genetics, right, to actually reconcile genealogy and whatnot, right? We're using genetics to connect ourselves to the Levant, where other people are telling us we have no connection to the Levant. We're trying to clear things up with that, right? But another way that Bruce used the genetics, and he didn't want to acknowledge this, was that he uses genetics when it comes to phenotype. So again, phenotype is genetic expression. No matter how you slice it, it is genetic expression. And so he wants to say people are or are not Israelites based upon genetic expression of their skin tone and their phenotype. Right? Again, I gave him the scenario of if I have a child, like my father is 93, 94% sub-Saharan African, I'm half, etc. If I have a child with somebody who's European or not African descent or not black or whatever, they're going to have another phenotype. I gave them the scenario of like 3, 4, 5 generations down the road. My people are mixing with Europeans or whatnot. My great grandchildren are going to be proper blonde hair, blue eyed. I said, are they considered Negro in Israel? He said no. Reed then hit him with the flip scenario of, okay, let's say that they've been mixing with Hamites for the same amount of time or whatnot, and they're still phenotypically black, but they're autosomally Hamite and not Israelite or whatnot. Are they still Israelite? He said yes. Right. So he's special pleading with using phenotype and genetics and whatnot, and pretending he doesn't use genetics. And he literally came on the last time we were on. He came on and said, is not genealogy the base of genetics? And we said, yeah. We agreed on the concept that genealogy and genetics are the same thing, and it's okay. It was okay to reconcile your paternal genealogy as an Israelite. With that, I digress.
Also, he likes to use Paul, but didn't Paul reckon himself by his genealogy?
He sure did. Did he not say what tribe he was from?
All right, exactly. So I don't want to keep going on with Bruce about this. Let's finish up to do what we came to do. All right, and he can come up and say whatever he wants to say another time.
According to the scriptures, there was a global flood, and everybody died in the global flood except for Noah and his children, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. And according to the biblical narrative, the ark was supposed to have rested in the mountains of Ararat. And some people say this is in Armenia. Some people say this is near Mount Kuti in Syria. I personally believe it's Mount Kuti, but regardless, the ark rested in the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East. And I believe Damon is a Bible believer. And so I believe that he would say that, everybody descends from Adam and Eve, and then, man started to sin. Most High sent a flood to wipe out all of humanity except for Noah and his family. And then everybody got off the ark and then migrated about the world. So my question to Damon is, how do we as African Americans or as West Central Africans or anybody originate in Western Central Africa if the ark rested in the Fertile Crescent? Either you have to say that we're pre-Adamites or that we don't descend from Noah or something like that in order for us to have originated in Western Central Africa. And furthermore, you also have to believe in the evolutionary concept of the out of Africa theory, because basically, Damon, what you're saying is that when humans began to migrate out of Africa, our ancestors either just stayed in Africa and went west, but that doesn't make sense according to the biblical narrative. So my question to you, Damon, is, do you believe that we descend from Noah and that we got off the ark and we migrated to Western Central Africa, or did we somehow just pop up in Western Central Africa? I'd love to understand your stance on that, because I take the biblical approach that, all of humanity today, current humans today, descend from Noah, and we all migrated to the parts of the world that we're at today. So that would mean that the ancestors of Western Central African peoples migrated to Western Central Africa, where they are today. The only question is, what time did they get there? So I would like to for you to answer that question.
Yeah, I gotta bag you up on that, because we know the lands that are outlined in Genesis 10 for the sons of Noah to spread out and spread their seed. So which land do our ancestors come from? It can't be West Africa, because that's not mentioned in there. There's the Nile Valley, you have the Middle East, and you have Europe. Which one is it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And so another thing I want to point out is what is haplogroup DE, which is the ancestral marker of E1B1A. And when it comes to haplogroup DE, it has its origin. Most geneticists would say that it has its origin in the Middle East, and that they would have came into Africa via basal Eurasians. So let's read this source right here. It says frequency of Y-DNA haplogroup E in modern populations and hypothetical migration routes from its ancestor clade DE in Southwest Asia, the Middle East. Haplogroup E arrived in Africa about 77,000 years ago and diversified in the Horn of Africa. It arrived together with specific West Eurasian alleles and later also diffused into various Paleo-African populations, as well as among ancient North Africans, which were in population indigenous to northern Africa and distinctly related or ancestral to modern West Eurasians. Haplogroup E and DE have an Middle Eastern origin. Again, people with E1B1A descend from haplogroup E and DE. And geneticists will say that haplogroup E and DE have a Middle Eastern origin. So we migrated from the Middle East into Western Central Africa. Haplogroup E migrated into Africa as part of.
Oh, someone say something?
No, I think somebody's mic was open on the video. I think Sean had his mic open on the level.
Yeah, that was my mic on the video when we did the live.
A massive migration of basal Eurasians, ancestral West Eurasians, and then diffused and diversified within Africa, specifically the Horn of Africa, Northeast Africa. Haplogroup DE next to CF were the basal Eurasian lineages which expanded from the Middle East. The common ancestral haplogroup Y-DNA Adam is suggested to have originated somewhere in the Middle East or the Iranian Plateau. Massive Eurasian migration and following admixture created the many different African populations of today and are the reason for the high genetic diversity observed in sub-Saharan Africa. In other words, modern Africans, sub-Saharan Africans, formed from indigenous Paleo-African groups and intrusive Afro-Sans, basal Eurasians, and ancient North Africans. Finally, there is the fact why haplogroup E is dominant among non-hunter-gatherers in Africa, and it is within the Eurasian clade DE. Again, haplogroup E is Eurasian. While indigenous African hunter-gatherers belong to haplogroup A, A00, and B. So the more indigenous Africans would be haplogroup A, 00, and B, not E. And again, E1B1A descends from E. So, with that being said, we would actually postulate in the YAP gang group that Shem would be haplogroup E. And part of this is because of certain ancient populations.
Yeah, the paragroup.
Yeah,
the paragroup DE.
Yeah, the paragroup
DE. It would be both, yeah.
And the reason we say this is because of certain ancient populations, such as the Natufians. When it comes to the Natufians, it's believed that they are the ancestors of Semitic people. And the Natufians had haplogroup E. Let's read this. This is from the book In Hot Pursuit of Language and Prehistory, and it reads, this paper makes an additional inference, since there is archaeological and physical anthropological reason to believe that the Natufians were related to modern Semitic-speaking peoples of Levant. Now, what haplogroup is the Natufians? The haplogroup of the Natufians is haplogroup E. This is from the paper Paleolithic DNA from the Caucasus Reveals Core of West Eurasian Ancestry, and it reads, such a scenario would also explain the presence of Y chromosome.
Hey, Berean, are you there? Oh, he might say. I just real quick, I just want to point out Mr. Blacktastic, what he put in the chat. The curse of Deuteronomy 28 are not DNA evidence that prove ancestry, nor are they indisputable prophetic markers for identity. It seems only blacks in the U.S. wear curses proudly as their ID. The next thing he said, if the curses of Deuteronomy 28 are your claim to Israel, then it shows that you are descendant of covenant-breaking sinners. Focus on getting back to the blessings, verses 1 to 14, and repent. Amen.
Hashtag shots fired.
Chromosome haplogroup E in the Natufians and Levantine farmers, a common link between the Levant and Africa. And as a matter of fact, it's believed that haplogroup E is really the founder of Afro-Asiatic peoples. But I'm not going to go too deep into that. I also actually I will go into that. I actually want to illustrate that the Proto-Afro-Asiatic language group and people would have had haplogroup E. But let's just reaffirm ourselves with the Natufians. This book, which is from Cambridge, says, given the modern distribution of Semitic languages over the area in question, which belong to the larger Afro-Asiatic family, it seems appropriate to suggest that these first farmers of the Levant and their Mesolithic predecessors, including the Natufian culture, were speaking a Proto-Afro-Asiatic language. It may be that Proto-Semitic continued to develop within the Levant and Syria area, since both Ebelite and Akkadian early Semitic languages are there attested early, the former around 2400 BC. And so just to show you the haplogroup that's believed to be Afro-Asiatic, this is again from peer-reviewed paper, Y chromosome E haplogroups, their distribution and implication to the origin of Afro-Asiatic languages and pastoralism. It reads, the Proto-Afro-Asiatic group carrying the E-P mutation, by the way, haplogroup E1B1A descends from E-P2. So it says the Proto-Afro-Asiatic group carrying the E-P2 mutation may have appeared at this point in time and subsequently gave rise to the different major population groups, including current speakers of the Afro-Asiatic languages and pastoralist populations. So the ancestors of Afro-Asiatic people would have carried haplogroup E. And it actually makes a lot of sense if you look at...
Real quick, Avery, make sure that everybody understands that EP2 is that E1B1A and E1B1B would come from EP2.
Yes. EP2, also known as E1B1, is the father of E1B1A and E1B1B. And it actually makes a lot of sense that haplogroup E, that Afro-Asiatic people are haplogroup E, because if you look at a simple distribution map of Afro-Asiatic languages, it actually overlaps perfectly with haplogroup E. As a matter of fact, here's a chart showing everything together. Right here is the distribution of Natufian DNA. This is the distribution of haplogroup E, specifically E1B1B, and this is the distribution of Afro-Asiatic people or languages, and it all overlaps beautifully. Now, another thing I want to touch on before I end off is Dante Forson, because as he said in his video, he is quite literally the receipt, and Moore's going to touch on this as well. But Dante carries the haplogroup known as E-M34. Is that correct, Moore? E-M34.
He's EL29, so he's EM84. He's a subclade of EM34.
Okay, he's a downstream of it.
Yep.
Well, what's interesting about EM34 specifically, since just talking about that, one is that the Natufians carried EM34, which is Dante's ancestral haplogroup. It says, according to the genetic analysis done on 6 Natufian remains from northern Israel, the Natufians carried the Y DNA haplogroup E-Z830, a somewhat upland clade of E-M123, and therefore ancestral to it. The Natufians were one of the first settled peoples in the world and may have contributed to the domestication of certain crops and thus the advent of agriculture. The discovery of E-Z830 without other clades suggests an indigenous presence in Canaan and Israel that predates all other clades, which are not known to have existed in the region at the time, 10,000 years before present. E-M123 is thought to have a TMRCA. TMRCA means the most common recent ancestor, about 18,000 years ago, 8,000 years before the Natufian, possibly ancestral remains are from. Haplogroup E1B1B2 has been found in 75% of the Angazelle population, along with 60% of PPNB, pre-pottery Neolithic B, populations circa 8,800 through 6,500 BC. And so just to explain why Dante having EM34 is extremely interesting is because EM34 is actually considered to be a haplogroup of Proto-Semites. I'm going to try to find this, and then we'll end off here and go to more. And so let me just show this really quick. I'm going to back out of here. Go back here. But just as Dante said, he quite literally is the receipt because one, his haplogroup is part of the Afroasiatic, typical Afroasiatic haplogroups. And if you go to eupedia.com, titled haplogroup.
So you want to address this on the chat?
Question. So E1B1A and E1B1B is Israel, and are Somalis Israelites also? This is what's interesting about the concept of the mixed multitude after the Exodus. You could actually have a mixture of E1B1As and E1B1Bs as well as other haplogroups, but let's just stick with these two. You can have a mixture of E1B1A and E1B1B Israelites in the nation of Israel. And are Somalis Israelites also? I haven't studied the Somalis, but I heard of a people called the dang, what's their name? The Yari.
You're thinking about the Ibir.
Yeah, the Yabir. Yeah, they seem to have some Jewish ancestry. So, but yeah, did you want to take on that question more as well?
Yeah. So just to touch on the Somalis, there's literally Somali people that have EL29, like Dante's exact DNA, right? So they literally have downstreams of the Natufian DNA, right? So they have definite ties to Levant. And there are some people who have traditions of Israelite ties in the Somali population. That's not to say the entire Somali population are Israelites. And just to be clear, family, we're not, just as a caveat and a disclaimer, we're not making the claim that all of West Africa is Israel via these papers or whatnot. We're not making the claim that that all of East Africa or all of Sub-Saharan Africa are Israelites based upon these papers. We're making the claim.
All African Americans.
Yeah, or all African Americans are Israelites. We're making the claim that we share DNA that can also be found within the founding populations of the Israelites 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, etc. So we want to be very clear about that. We're not saying that everyone is the same thing here. We're saying that these people share a DNA that goes back a certain period of time, and it's also DNA from the Levant that comes into West Africa. So those are the claims being made here, and we want to be very clear about that. And Ibri's showing papers that deal with genetics and linguistics that back up the same concept. What you got to say?
Are you claiming that E1B1A slash E1B1B are? I'm assuming you're saying are Israelites. There are Yeah, go ahead, Mo.
You got it. You got. I'll
yeah, there are subclades.
I want to say something real quick too.
My bad. What?
Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, there are definitely subclades that are of Israelite origin, and I'm actually going to lay out a few here in this video. So yeah, there's definitely various E-clades in the Levant that are of Israelite origin. And again, like I said in the video, in our model, we believe that the biblical Shem is haplogroup EE. So Abraham would have to be Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would have to be a downstream of haplogroup E, one of the subclades.
You got it, OG.
I just want to add this little caveat too. So we also believe, because mutations are random, that the Israelite population may have been haplogroup E1B1, subclades of E1B1A and E1B1B, along with Esau, Ishmael. You would find subclades of E1B1A and E1B1B amongst them, as mutations are random.
100%. And there's another question, and the question: if there's a DNA test that says specific Levant Israelite from 500 BC, would you consider those people Israelites? If we find remains and we know for a fact that these are Israelite remains, then sure, I would say that these people will be part of the nation of Israel.
Slim, you had a question for one of them?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Black Tastic, Mr. Black Tastic, don't come in here talking that sense and making these people head hurt. Don't try to make them think. These folk don't want to think. Stop it. Stop your nonsense right now. Go ahead, Slim.
I just wanted to try to see if I was getting this correctly. Are you guys saying that you're testing DNA from Abraham and comparing it to people's DNA now, people who get their DNA test now?
Do you mind if I answer that?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
All right. So as we don't have the DNA for Abraham, I said this the other day, and I know we're fielding a lot of questions right now. We barely come up here, so I want to really get through this. I don't have a problem with answering questions, but a lot of you guys are always over here. So we just really want to get through this video because it's kind of long. But to answer your question, repeat your question one more time, bro.
Are you guys testing this from actual blood DNA from?
Okay. Right. So the question was, are we getting this from Abraham? No, we don't have Abraham's DNA. We don't have Jacob's. We don't have Isaac's DNA. But we do know that there are people that actually live this culture. That we have material culture from people living in the Levant area. Judaism, if you want to call it that, they practice this culture. We have writings from different nations who either conquered them or lived beside them and spoke about them. So we know these people existed. So we're comparing the DNA to them. And we find that haplogroup E is amongst them. Is that sufficient enough for you, bro?
Well, I'm just trying to be clear because, right, so you're saying you're not testing it to DNA, you're testing it to people who said they, had the DNA?
No, we're testing it to DNA. We're testing it to the DNA of the people who lived in the Levant during the Iron Age and said they were Israel and that other nations point to as being Israel.
Okay.
And they're using inductive reasoning. They're going backwards to it. Yeah.
Also, another thing I like to point out, we're also looking at populations that would represent the ancestors of Semitic populations. Because obviously, according to the biblical narrative, the Israelites descend from Shem, Shem being the father of Semitic peoples. So in archaeology, we're going to look for a population in the Middle East that can represent the ancestors of Semitic peoples. Interestingly enough, we can go back to the Stone Age to look for this. Obviously, when it comes to the biblical narrative, after the global flood, everybody after the flood is going to be using stone tools. So we look at Stone Age populations. Interestingly, in the Levant, there is a people known as the Natufians. I mentioned them in this paper. And it would seem like the Natufians would be the best representatives of Afro-Asiatic speaking peoples, and specifically the ancestors of Semitic populations. And so we say that with the Natufians being a population that seems to be the ancestors of Semites, and they have haplogroup E, then we kind of deduce that it is likely that the Natufians could represent the earliest descendants of Shem after the flood that would have lived in the Stone Age, and they lived in Levant.
Yeah, real quick, Berean, do me a favor. I just jumped on my laptop, so if you look backstage, you'll see me back there. Thank you. I'm gonna hang up my phone now. Thank you, bro.
And real quick to answer the brother shout out to Berean in the chat. Yeah, 100%, bro. Just hit me up whenever you get your DNA back. We'll do a whole show about it if you want to, bro. Or we can do behind closed doors. How we want to do it, bro.
All right, that's you on Dunamis. Who controlling the video?
Yeah. I'm going back. No, I just never answered the question.
Oh, you answer. Go ahead. No, my bad. Go ahead.
So wait, I kind of one more question I saw in the chat. So what would Japhet be?
Japhet in our model would be haplogroup CF, which represents pretty much YAP negative proteins. Because we call ourselves, again, just going back to YAP gang, we call ourselves YAP gang because it's a Y-alu polymorphic. It's a protein that only people with haplogroup DE have. Now, everybody that's YAP negative will be in the CF lineage. And basically 90% of haplogroups, Eurasian haplogroups, are CF or under the CF branch. And so
Already,
that's
let's bring it down to earth for people a little bit. Like, so if you're taking the 23andMe, it's not going to say CF for you, right? Like, so what major what other major pairings or pair groups are you going to find and haplogroups are you going to find under CF?
I think every block G.
haplogroups such as R more, is like specific haplogroups.
No, yeah, like run me through like the I, J, K, F. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I have a phylogenetic tree up. I'm really not trying to get sidetracked here, but I have a phylogenetic tree and I could show it.
So this isn't getting sidetracked, OG. Like, really, this is actually a good part to we don't have to go through the rest of the video because at this juncture we're just going to get into the part where I go into the.
No, and to be honest, Sean don't know. A lot of people don't know the basics.
Right.
All right. So
what's the simplest video you think y'all got on the subject?
We can play just a little bit more, and then we can stop. There's a second. You can stop at you can stop at 1 hour and 2 minutes, which is like I think 10 minutes. Or 5 minutes.
Yeah, because we got to break that. Because I think the next question a lot of people bring up is the haplogroups of Ham and not Ham, Shem, Japhet, and Ham.
Right. So in our model, our model is going to look like A and B is going to be Ham, Shem is going to be DE, and then Japheth is going to be again. It's like what the brother was talking about, like the CF and below, but it's going to turn into like the I, J, K, F, G, etc.
Can I show them a phylogenetic tree, bro?
Yeah, bring out a share screen.
Oh, you want to? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. And then one last thing, what would y'all speculate Adam's haplogroup to be, the first man?
Personally, everybody in YAP game might have a different opinion on this, but personally, I would say that Adam had no genetic mutation because, again, what is a haplogroup? It's a genetic mutation. So I would say Adam didn't have a genetic mutation, but rather most humans today, or all humans today, our most common recent ancestor would actually be Noah and his wife. They, in a sense, would be our Adam. They are our most common recent ancestor.
I would say A-double-O. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I'm more so in agreement with Ibri on that one. In terms of a haplogroup being more so like a measure of a mutation and whatnot. So I'm not so certain that that Adam would have had a mutation like that. I think he might have had like perfect DNA potentially. But science will prove that one out.
Okay, so with that, just follow up. So would you say that Christ would be similar to Adam in terms of that?
Hey, bro, you're getting it.
Perfect DNA, untarnished man, pure blood, all that kind of same like that.
Hey, you know the crazy thing though? Check this out. So, if for those of you that believe in the virgin birth, this is where things get interesting. So Jesus wouldn't have a Y DNA haplogroup. He would come from his mother Mary. So he would carry his mom's MT DNA. What does the scripture say? By the seed of the woman will the man crush, the serpent's head.
Correct.
That's very, it gets kind of interesting, but I won't get too far into that.
No, you're going good because Christian doctrine, the blood of Christ, taking on his blood, all that kind of stuff, becoming a new man, all that kind of thing.
The second Adam.
Yeah.
Hey,
so
it's interesting, but
they don't like that though.
Yeah, I'm ready to share my screen.
You can take my screen down and share Sean Harris. Bring you stepped away?
No, my bad. What happened?
Nah, they want to. Sean Harris going to share screen. He's going to do a breakdown.
Where's this is up the screen right here? What you saying?
Hey, Sean, are you sharing your screen?
Oh, gee, you sharing your screen?
You're muted if you're speaking.
Dunamis, you gotta text me. I'm a little. I don't know what's going on.
Damn it. Hold on. I just lost it again.
Hey,
It's up
real
there.
quick. Yeah,
It's
Berean,
up there,
real
Sean.
quick.
Oh, there it
just
is.
said
Okay.
He's doing a breakdown of the DNA.
So
and
you
different
see the
family trees.
CF over here? This
Yeah.
is what we would consider Japhet. So CH lineages are all over. You have to move the banner, bro.
Hold on. What is Bruce saying? He ain't.
He talking about the whole.
I gotta put the super chats up. Certain stuff I gotta put up here, but I'm trying to move around. Just
All right,
read
but I
that
can't
right
show, bro. I can't show the phylogenetic tree. Somebody
Yeah,
asked
Yeah,
a question.
Yeah, I'll keep track. I'll keep track.
Sean, it can be seen clearly even with the banners, bro. Like so everyone can see the DE on the left, and the CT, like Yeshua talks about like the potential CT character, and then we see the CF lineage, right? And CS breaking down into C, FT, GHIJK, HIJK, IJK, K. All you see, all these little there's breakdowns off of that. Like the majority of haplogroups that are in the world come off the CF lineage and whatnot, right? So we're saying in our model, the majority of haplogroups that you're going to find in the world are going to be off the CF lineage or off the Japhetic lineage and whatnot. We're saying that in our model, we're saying that the Shemitic lineage is based off of DE and that the Hamitic lineage is based off of AB, etc.
After the
Also,
video,
you
I can
start to
pull
see.
up my.
Also, you start to see that most of these phylogenetic trees always have 3 nodes coming off of 1 after the bottleneck, and we would consider that Noah and his 3 sons. So it's always set up this, particularly in a 3-node situation. Some may have lettering different, but it'll always start off with a 3-node coming from 1.
After the video, I can pull up my chart that I have when it comes to the breaking up of Noah's sons. That can might also kind of help. But just play like 5 more minutes of it, and then we can get to the
So go back to my screen,
That's the same other one, right? You know what? I'm convinced some of y'all, if y'all not really thorough in DNA, don't get up here and don't try to argue with these guys just because they're Israelites and you're just against Israelites. Some of y'all are just against Israelites. Even if you don't know nothing about the information, y'all just want to bang just to bang because the people claiming Israel. That's the only reason.
I don't know. It seems more that some that claim Israel banging on DNA more than the non-Israelites. I could be wrong though.
No, I can't lie. I think banging. I think dealing with the DNA in general, it's like an anti. There's a good bit of people that's just against the science, and you mixing science or this type of knowledge with the Bible. Because I can't lie, it's equally. I'm looking at my phone. I'm in the background talking. There's other people. It's a lot of folk ain't going for DNA whatsoever. Like these people are here to deceive Israel and Christian alike. Some people just against it altogether. But go ahead, Dunamis.
More, you were saying something before I start back?
I just can't believe this is the same thing to get people out of the penitentiary, get people paying child support, and y'all are against this. I don't even understand. I don't understand Bible people no more. I don't care what side of the fence y'all on. I just don't understand Bible people anymore. Go ahead. I'm muting myself.
All right, More, you good? I can play. All right.
Yeah, no, I'm straight.
All right.
Group E1B1B. It says E-M34 is the main Middle Eastern variety of E1B1B and is thought to have arrived with the Proto-Semitic people in the late Copper to early Bronze Age. And this is important because the latest papers dealing with Semitic people say that Semites have a Levantine origin. This is from the paper Bayesian Phylogenetic Analysis of Semitic Languages, identifies an early Bronze Age origin of Semitic in the Near East. And it reads, we estimate that Semitic had an early Bronze Age origin approximately 5,750 years before present in the Levant, followed by an expansion of Akkadian into Mesopotamia. And a Semitic origin in the Levant is very important because, as we know, the Natufians have a Levantine origin or were in the Levant again. Such a scenario would also explain the presence of Y chromosome haplogroup E in the Natufians and Levantine farmers, a common link between the Levant and Africa. And again, the Natufians are the ancestors of Semites. This paper makes an additional inference since there is archaeological and physical anthropological reason to believe that the Natufians were related to modern Semitic-speaking peoples of the Levant. And again, E1B1A and E1B1B are both related. They are both brother clades. And E-P2 is believed to be the Proto-Afroasiatic haplogroup, meaning that both E1B1A and E1B1B fall under that Proto-Afroasiatic belt. And with that, I conclude.
If I may just say something real quick, I just want to do a quick review that we're directly answering this question as it pertains to West African ancestry being in connection with the ancient Israelites by giving him an article which directly states it, and by supporting it by showing a strong connection between West Africa and the Near East, as Ivry just went over by showing DNA connections and pretty much an ancient link between EP2, which is the pretty much foundation of Semitic speakers, and West Africans who descend from EP2.
Actually, I have one more thing I'm going to say before I end off. Also, I'm going to share my screen really quick. Sorry about that, More. I got one last thing I got to say. So, also, we don't, like Moore said, we don't believe that Jews are the descendants of Khazars. We believe that Jews are descendants of Israelites, especially those with haplogroup E. And haplogroup E has the greatest chance of being the Israelite marker, not only because, like I said earlier, about it being Afroasiatic and Proto-Semitic, but when it comes to Dante's haplogroup and just Jewish people in general, many geneticists would actually state that it is a Israelite marker, and that Jewish people carry haplogroup E as a founding haplogroup. For instance, if you go to Y-DNA haplogroup E, E1B1B and E1B1A, excuse me, sorry, it's blurred. It's going to clear up here. It says this haplogroup has a long presence in the Near East as well, as demonstrated by its occurrence in ancient remains in the Levant and mummies in Egypt. Today, a significant contingent of Ashkenazi, excuse me?
No, go ahead, bro. I'm sorry.
Of Ashkenazi 20% and Sephardi 30% Jews belong to specific sub-haplogroup E-M215, defined by mutation E-M123, supporting this as a major founding lineage of the Jewish people. Again, haplogroup E is a major founding lineage of the Jewish people. And 20% of Ashkenazi Jews and 30% of Sephardi Jews carry haplogroup E. So really, when you combine that 20% and that 30%, that's 50% of European Jewry with haplogroup E, when you think about it. And just to push this point even further, haplogroup E is seen as a haplogroup that is of Israelite origin. And I'm just going to read this one final quote, and then we'll end off here. Because I believe people need to understand this, that haplogroup E is definitely up there as a Israelite marker. And there are papers that literally discuss this. I'm going to see if this is it. All right, so I believe this one might be it. It says, in fact, the title of the paper, A Mosaic of People, the Jewish Story, and a Reassessment of the DNA Evidence. And it says, in fact, the best candidate for possibly E3B Israelite ancestry among Jews is E-M123. This subclade occurs in almost the same proportions, approximately 10 to 12%, among both Ashkenazim and Sephardim. According to Cruciani in 2004, E-M123 probably originated in the Middle East. It is found in large majority of the population from that area, and then back migrated to Ethiopia. Yet, again, another back migration with haplogroup E. Anyways, it says, yet the fact that both Sephardim and Ashkenazim possess this subclade in similar high frequency supports an Israelite/Middle Eastern origin. So we have no issue with Jewish people descending from Israelites, because many Jewish people have haplogroup E. And again, haplogroup E is seen as Afroasiatic and Proto-Semitic. We have nothing against the Jewish people. And by the way, even Jews who don't have haplogroup E, let's say that they have J, I'll also say they're descendants of Israelites, because Israelites were among various peoples. We know of the mixed multitude in the Exodus, and people joined the nation all the time. So
yeah, we amalgamated a lot of people that we were fighting around us. There's even 2 Canaanite nations that we made treaties with, which pretty much made them part of our nation. So we have to acknowledge the presence of outside DNA within the Proto-Semitic spectrum, I guess I'll say.
Also, is that the evidence points you see them there. You see haplogroup J there during from the Bronze Age down. You see them involved with Israelite culture. So it's no denying that they were there. That's something we won't do.
And you can end right there. Now I'll give it over to I think more. So that's the meat of it. And again, you can go to the YAP Gang Scholarship channel if you want to watch the beginning of this video and the end of this video. The beginning had more speaking about us between Damon and our interactions on Facebook, and the end deals with Dante's DNA, where more is about to get into Dante's DNA. So check out the YAP Gang Scholarship channel if you want to finish the video.
Thank y'all so much. Where was that exchange between yourself and Richardson, Damon Richardson, y'all brothers?
It was on Facebook and I think the Biblical Rumble Room.
Or the BRR. Y'all familiar? Most people here should be familiar with the Biblical Rumble Room. But hold on, Bruce is here. Bruce, I know you want to address that. Go ahead, Bruce.
Can I say something real quick? Can I say something real quick before Bruce start? I want to say this. So we pretty much answered a lot of questions. We went through about 4 papers, couple of books, different articles, 4 papers, a lot of evidence. We pretty much answered Damon Richardson's challenge. So now I want to pose a challenge back to him. I would like him to find us a sample of haplogroup of E1B1A in West Africa over 3,500 years old.
All right, y'all heard that. Say it one more time.
I'd like Damon Richardson to find a sample of haplogroup or E1B1A in West Africa over 3,500 years ago.
All right, come on, Bruce.
Hey, no,
thank you,
real quick.
Oh,
I want to make it because this got to be understood. Nah, the fact that these are, let me put my black hat on, my black power hat. The fact that we have black brothers get into the sciences, right? Which has been denied us for years, doing research, peer review research on a high level, that their research could lead to more discoveries and findings, to me, on any level, shouldn't be discouraged. You know what I'm saying? They ain't doing witchcraft. They ain't doing no sorcery. This is pure science, which is secular, and they're making grounds. The same science that put us as monkeys, they're using to break a lot of myths and that kind of stuff. So to me, to discourage anyone from doing this kind of work, I don't know.
I gotta ride with Dunamis on that one. I gotta ride with him now.